talkTV. We're going to be discussing Israel's operation in Rafah, which has enabled them to release 2 hostages. Joining me now to discuss this is Avi Hyman, who is the spokesman for the Israeli government. Avi, thank you so much for joining us here on talkTV. Could you give us some details about this operation that has enabled the release of 2 hostages?
Good afternoon, Jake. Thank you so much for having me on. I can tell you that this was a heroic, valiant effort on behalf of the IDF. At precisely 1:49 in the morning here in Israel, a joint force of Israeli forces entered a building. On the 2nd floor of that building were 2 Israeli civilians being held hostage for now over 4 months, a 60-year-old and a 70-year-old. The IDF went into the building under constant fire from all directions. They killed 3 terrorists that were holding those civilians and used their own bodies to shield the Israeli hostages and bring them to safety. Now, it's important to note that while Israel we use our body to shield our people, and we will do our utmost to bring home every last hostage, Hamas does its utmost to use their people as a human shield and to ensure that they get maximum civilian casualties on their side.
What was the reaction of the families who'll be very relieved following the illegal seizure of these people by the Hamas terrorist organisation on October the 7th? What was the reaction of the family when their loved ones eventually came home?
Jake, it was remarkable. I mean, the whole nation feels at peace, and the images that we're seeing of the hugs and the group hugs and the sighs of relief. I mean, 253 Israelis were taken on October 7th against their will, men, women, children, babies, and they've been languishing in the Hamas terror dungeons. We're getting closer to them. We said from day one that we were going to release every last one of them, and that's exactly what we intend to do.
And is that the reason that the conflict is now likely to expand to Rafah? Is it your belief that there will be significant numbers of hostages, or your hope, I'm sure, that significant number of hostages are being held in that region of Gaza?
So I don't want to speak specifically about intelligence as to where the hostages are or aren't. Obviously, there are lives at stake. But what I will say is that we're going ahead with our mission as set on day one. We said we would destroy Hamas. As the Prime Minister said, that doesn't mean half of Hamas. That doesn't mean 3/4 of Hamas. That means all of Hamas after they perpetrated the barbarity that we saw on October 7th. And we release every last hostage. We will bring them all home. No one can be left behind. Now, we've already taken out 18 out of 24 Hamas battalions. There are 2 in Khan Yunis, where we're currently fighting, and there's another 4 in Rafah. Now, there's an issue in Rafah that there's a lot of civilians that have moved out of harm's way that are there that we're going to have to evacuate, move out of the way, because our fight obviously is with Hamas and not the people of Gaza. And we will do our utmost, as we have from day one, to complete the mission, to destroy all 24 battalions of Hamas, and to limit civilian casualties to the best of our ability.
A lot of European governments, including David Cameron, our Foreign Secretary, are concerned about the approach in Rafah, particularly with the potential loss of civilian life. You talk about moving civilians out of Rafah to enable you to prosecute your intention to root out Hamas. Where should they go?
Well, Jake, we had a lot of the same questions at the beginning of the war. After October 7th, after Hamas plowed through our borders, killing children in front of their parents and parents in front of their children, lighting whole families on alive, raping as a weapon. After all of that happened, we were told, "Oh, don't go into Gaza. It's too risky." For the last 16 years, Hamas has been embedding themselves under schools, hospitals, mosques, UN facilities, and we did. We went in. They said, "Don't go in the tunnels. The tunnels are booby trapped. You know, the tunnels are the length." 1.5 times the size of the London Underground. Don't go in there. It's too risky. We went in there. Our brave soldiers are still in there. They said, don't go into the hospitals that have been turned into terror bases. We went in with minimum civilian casualties. We moved over a million. We enabled the movement of over a million Gazans from North Gaza to the south, so that again, in a way that no other army has done in history, we limited civilian casualties. So we'll copy and paste what we've done until now. We'll do our very utmost to avoid civilian casualties because our fight
Okay.
is with Hamas.
Yeah,
We're
I
bringing
understand that. I understand that. And I think for the purpose of record, it's worth noting that the IDF leafleted extensively in northern Gaza, asking civilians to leave northern Gaza to try and minimise civilian casualties. But those people did go to Rafah. So I ask you that question again. If people are to leave Rafah so the IDF can prosecute a war against an illegal terrorist organisation, Hamas, where are they to go? Are they to go back north? Are you encouraging Egypt to open a crossing over into Egypt? Where are they to go?
So it's not entirely true that they all went down to Rafah. What they did is they used the safe corridors that we opened up.
So I
They
mean, just if
they
I can ask you then,
we set
if,
up, and they weren't just in Rafah. They were all over the south of Gaza, and now there's areas opened up north of there that we will now use, and we're currently in the planning stages of working out together with the international community exactly where those safer zones will be, and we'll do our utmost.
that helps me. That's the answer I wanted. So there is a plan to allay the fears of Joe Biden, David Cameron, other European governments to have safe humanitarian corridors for people to leave Rafah. Except not everyone went to Rafah, but it's widely reported that a large proportion of people did. When are we going to hear more about this plan to have safe humanitarian corridors to enable people to leave Rafah?
Just as at the beginning of the war, people thought we were going to go in guns a blazing, and we took our time. We planned it down to the minutia. We will do the same thing. We will not announce to the enemy over talkTV exactly when to expect our forces, but the IDF is currently planning. The Prime Minister has given them the order to make a plan to go after the last battalions of Hamas. And we will do that while limiting civilian casualties. Anyone who says that we shouldn't go into Rafah is essentially saying that we should not win the war. It's kind of like, the Allies in World War II, they're just about to take over Germany, and then they say, you know what? Let's just leave Berlin intact. That's not how it works. We've taken out 18, we're going to take out 24.
I'm certainly not saying that you shouldn't go into Rafah. I'm asking you because it's legitimate. The British Foreign Secretary, we understand the President of the United States has raised question about this. To move off slightly, several Israeli government ministers have said they would like to see Jewish people settle Gaza. Is that the official policy of the Israeli government to try and bring peace to Gaza after the war?
So firstly, let me say that as far as the international community is concerned, we're on the same page. We want to limit civilian casualties. As far as the day after Hamas is concerned, we're still fighting. Our forces are still there. The Prime Minister has made very clear is the day after Hamas, Gaza will need to be demilitarized. It'll need to be de-radicalized. And we'll need to rebuild Gaza together with the international community. Now, what that will look like, who will be living there, who won't be living there, time will tell. We're still fighting the war. We're fighting on multiple fronts. And we're a democratic country, so that discussion will be had when the time comes.
But how is it helpful to your job, building that international coalition, who I think are still with Israel, quite rightly want to support you in your war against Hamas? It's not helpful, is it, that Israeli government ministers are calling for the settlement of Gaza by Jewish people? It doesn't help with the war.
Until 2005, Israelis lived in the Gaza Strip. There was about 8,000 Israelis living in the Gaza Strip. We pulled out every last Israeli. We handed the Gaza Strip to the Palestinian Authority on a silver platter. We expected peace in return because we were told it was the settlers the problem. Having Jews as your neighbors is apparently a problem in Gaza. So we pulled them all out. We even took out the Israelis from their graves. We exhumed their bodies. And what did we get? The areas that were Israeli settlements before became launch pads for thousands and thousands of rockets on innocent Israeli civilians. So we've seen how that works. And obviously, about a year or so later, Hamas took over in the Gaza Strip, throwing Palestinian Authority people off roofs. And we see where that's got us. So, I mean, one thing I will say to our friends around the world is that Israel is a vibrant democracy. We have lots of different opinions on everything, and that's a good thing. And that's why you like us, and that's why you'll continue to stand with us, because it's not just our fight. You see, Hamas's charter doesn't just say that they want to destroy all of Israel, doesn't just say that they want to kill all of the Jews in Israel. They want to come for all of the Jews in the world and ultimately for the West. I mean, we're up against Hamas, we're up against Iran's other proxies. They make it very clear. First, they'll come for the Saturday people, the Jews, and then they'll come for the Sunday people. This is the same ideology. The same ideology on October 7th was the same ideology that blew up on the 7th of the 7th in London. We understand that ideology, and it needs to be fought, because otherwise state and non-state actors around the world are watching us very closely. We need to stand strong, and that's exactly what we'll do.
Avi, thank you so much for joining us here on talkTV, and congratulations to you and the IDF for releasing those 2 hostages. I know there are well over 100 still held by Hamas, and I've met some of their families myself when they visited London just a few weeks ago. So I wish you every luck in the world trying to reunite those hostages